Hi.
Hello. Page 611 of In Search of Christian Freedom. He's come to the end of the chapter, An Appealing Promise Unfulfilled, and he's finishing the story of Rene Groitman, who has lost his wife Clarisse to suicide at the age 34. And now, of course, this letter that Rene had written to Fred Franz personally, and now we climax the story by dealing with how the Watchtower itself dealt with the letter.
Yeah, how they responded.
Whether or not the Watchtower president personally saw or read Rene's letter, I cannot say. I know that the letter did not come before the governing body, but that was normal. Whatever the case, the president did not answer it. It was passed on to one of the men on the correspondence desks for reply. I think the overall tone of that reply reflects remarkably that of the expressions made by the congregation elders to whom Rene appealed. Now here's the letter itself, verbatim, dated November 14, 1977, addressed to Rene Groitman. Dear Brother Groitman, your additional letter received last month and addressed to Brother Franz has been directed to the writing department. We note the circumstances leading up to the death of your wife. We regretted very much to learn of the emotional turmoil that led up to what appears to be her taking her own life. While you have drawn certain conclusions, Brother Groitman, and they spelled his name wrong this time, as to what influenced her in this regard, we are sure you appreciate that it is very difficult to judge matters when it comes to human emotions and motivation. It is best to leave matters in Jehovah's merciful hands, as we continue to look to him for guidance, knowing that he will judge every situation with the proper balance of mercy and justice. You have attempted to place some of the blame upon Jehovah's organization, claiming that what is expected of Jehovah's people in the way of attending meetings and sharing in the service is too much and leads to frustration and even emotional problems. But here again, you are attempting to judge Jehovah's people and the Christian congregation by what you have personally concluded. To what extent your own attitude and view on matters and the way you have handled matters with your wife have contributed to developments with your wife is a question which we would be unable to answer for you. As a frank observation, Brother Groitman, we would recommend that you recognize how Jehovah is leading and teaching his people as a whole, and the evident blessing that they have from Jehovah. You are inclined to find fault with the encouragement to share regularly in attending the meetings and in preaching the good news, feeling that what is said at times sets forth more than what is reasonable for God's people.
The brothers here at the headquarters, through the publications and otherwise, and the elders in the local congregations, are merely endeavoring to discharge their responsibilities before Jehovah in providing encouragement and help to our brothers and sisters worldwide in remaining faithful to Jehovah and in fulfilling the commission to preach the good news of the kingdom in all the world as a witness. Each one individually has to decide how he or she can respond to the encouragement from the Scriptures, according to his or her own circumstances and abilities. When you honestly appraise the encouragement given, there is no attempt to regiment or control the thinking of the brothers and sisters as to make them robots. Your claim that the organization is attempting to brainwash or control the thoughts of the brothers and sisters is really unfounded, unless, of course, you are pointing to what Jesus and his apostles did in training Christians and helping them to do as the Apostle Paul said at 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 10, to, quote, be fitly united in the same mind and in the same line of thought, end of quote. May Jehovah bless your desire to serve him in accord with the prayer of the Apostle Paul in behalf of the Philippian Christians in Philippians 1, verses 9 to 11. Your brothers in Jehovah's Service, Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of New York.
This response, Ray says, is almost entirely devoted to justification of the organization's course and, bluntly stated, a put-down for the man who clearly wrote out of concern for a particular kind of persons within the organization and their welfare. The letter by the headquarters staff member contains at most one sentence that might be considered slightly comforting. As Renee mildly expressed it, quote, their reply was not very encouraging to me, left me rather on my own with my questioning and searching for truth and love, unquote. He experienced some serious problems following his wife's death, but in time, through prayer, and apart from the organization, overcame these and has manifested good stability. I believe that the combination of evidence, viewed on a worldwide basis, reveals why it is reasonable to say that sensitive and emotionally fragile persons in particular are at risk in what is called the spiritual paradise. I cannot help but think again of the prophet's words, you hustle the weary with flank and shoulder, you butt them with your horns until you have driven them away. That's from Ezekiel 34 verse 21 in the New English Bible.
At the beginning of this consideration, I expressed a sense of sadness, and what has been discussed only heightens that sense. What appears to offer such promise, what seems to lead the way to something beautiful, has proved quite otherwise. The fine qualities to be found among many have been diverted from their normal outlet. There has been a depersonalizing, and to some extent a dehumanizing effect as a result of the elevation, almost deification, of organizational authority. The sadness, as in the case of the former Roman Catholic theologian, results from, quote, instances of the damage done to persons by workings of an impersonal and unfree system, close quote. Not human interest, not the love of people that moved God to give his Son on their behalf, but the interests of an organization to sustain itself, to implant its essentially denominational views in more and more persons, and extend and maintain its authority over them, has in effect slain the idea which gave it birth.
Now this chapter has been nearly 60 pages long, but it's good to go back to the beginning of it and remember the text that Ray started with, which is from the New International Version of Isaiah 29 verse 8. As when a hungry man dreams, and that he is eating, but he awakens, and his hunger remains. As when a thirsty man dreams that he is drinking, but he awakens faint, with his thirst unquenched. Mm-hmm. So it is true that Jehovah's Witnesses have been dreaming this dream for well over 5 generations now.
Yeah, the end is soon, the end is soon.
And they are not yet having their expectations quenched.
Yeah.
They are going on and on, panting toward the end. And that in itself, that disappointment, that continued disappointment, sometimes within one generation, i.e. the 1975 to now people, including ourselves, over and over again, you're being disappointed in your
So
hope.
It ends up being more of a nightmare than a dream, a pleasant dream, because it just keeps repeating itself.
Even that,
no
therefore,
results.
even the disappointment would lead to emotional distress and stress, and I think mental meltdown in the long run, and depression. Mm-hmm. We're going to link to videos about Dwayne McNanny's updating of the 1975 information, because Dwayne made the point back around 25 years ago, another generation in the past now, that the Watchtower hadn't dropped its emphasis after 1975. They'd gone right on with the same mistaken approach, psychological approach to the brethren, i.e. if we don't keep the stick, and we don't keep the stick active and keep the carrot in front of their eyes, we can't keep this thing together. So Dwayne's work, we updated it with some quotes from what he had already told us, we called our approach to it, 5 generations have died in a false hope. Don't be the last generation to die in a false hope. It looks right now like they're doing it again. The stress upon maybe we're at the outbreak of the Great Tribulation.
Yeah. World events always supply something that could make you think that.
So that's the end of the chapter, an appealing promise unfulfilled. And next time, chapter 17, the challenge of Christian freedom.